Hello, good morning, students. So today we'll discuss multi-level inheritance. I hope that the tutorial link that I've given you, okay, for the multi-level inheritance, I'm sure that I hope that you have watched that, okay, so that to get a better understanding about these multi-level inheritance. Now, it's very important that you understand single inheritance also, okay, single inheritance, hierarchical inheritance, okay. So every inheritance topic is different, yet you can see that there is some similarity also. Okay, so let's move on to today's program. So a quick recap of from the tutorial what you have learned. Okay, so this program also is like in the from the previous program quite similar. Okay, just some new additions. So in multi-level inheritance, okay, if you see the if you flip onto the textbook and then if you see this particular diagram, right, so you have the base class, and then that is the base class is the grandfather, that is base class is A. Then from the base class, it is deriving another class B. So that is the derived class. Okay. Then again, from that class B, another class is derived. That is C. Okay. So that is derived from the class B. So what happened now is that B acts as intermediate base class. So now you can see that you have actually one base class, actual base class. So that is why it is called as a grandfather. But from there, another class is inheriting. So you have two derived class and two base class. One acts as the intermediate base class. That means intermediate, it acts as the base class for the class C, which is derived from the B. So you have the child, you have the father, you have the grandfather, like that, right? So based on that, like that, you can have multiple derived class or you can have multiple intermediate base class. If you have under class D, okay, C will act as the base class for class D, like that. Okay, but like explained in that particular program, okay, even though C is inheriting from B, it does not C is inheriting from B, okay, it does not mean that, okay, C does not have any properties that is not equal to A. Now keep in mind that B is inheriting from A, so C will also have uh, some properties that would be similar to A. That means C can also inherit directly from A also. Like, okay, so they are all linked together. So even if you have multiple derived class D, E, F, G like that, and D is inheriting from C. Okay, D will can also inherit from B, and D can also inherit from A, like that. Okay, so let us consider an example of three classes: employee, customer, and EMB cust. Here the class employee serves as a base class for the derived class customer, which in turn serves as the base class for the derived class EMB cust. So here employee class is the superclass. Okay, and the derived class, that is customer, which is derived from the from the employee, it acts as the intermediate base class. And then the derived class EMB curse, okay, it is the deriving from the customer class. Okay, so let's see the program. Okay, so pretty much similar programs. Okay, here the class employee, so it is the base class or super class. So you can see that it has private data members, EMB code, EMB name, okay, EMB designation, and EMB salary. So all these are private data members, so that means that these data members cannot be inherited by the derived class. So the derived class cannot have any access to this. Okay, but yes, the member functions are public, right? So the member, since the member functions are public, using the public member functions, okay, the private data members can be made accessible, right? So the derived class or base class, that is class customer. So you can see using the column, the base class has been inherited as public. Okay, so which means that the derived class can have public access to the two member functions, that is emb input data and emb display. Okay, both the return types are void. Now under the derived class, again customer, you can see that the data members are private. So these members itself, okay, now keep in mind that the base class cannot inherit from the derived class, but the derived class can inherit from the base class, like that. So the base class customer has private data members and it has two members which are made public. So similarly, the derived class from the class customer, that is emb cus, okay, here you can see that the access method here is private. Okay, so the access specifier here is private, so which means that, okay, uh, the private data members will remain private, that is cus code, cus name, cus designation. Okay, but the public member functions, okay, the public member functions, that is cus input data and cus display, okay, when it is defined in the class emb cus body, okay, there that public member function cus input data and cus display will become private. Okay, along with that, the emb customer has two public member function, void get data and show data, but the member functions that is inherited from the customer will become private because the access inheritance is private customer. Okay, so customer input data and customer display will become private. So from there, if any class is derived from emb cus, okay, then it cannot access these private member functions of the customer. Okay, now coming back to the main function, here the emb cus has declared an object that is called as emb cus. Okay, emb underscore cus class name has declared an object with the name emb cus. So the object is accessing the member function get data. Okay, so it is invoking the member function get data. So now get data belongs to the employee customer class, right? So here it has been declared here. So uh, so now this is the member function, so this function gets called. Okay, and in this function you can see that in this function body, okay, emb input data, customer input data. So emb input data belongs to the class employee, right? Belongs to the class employee. So now what happens is that, so this and this customer input data under the this function body, okay, belongs to the class customer, right? So this shows that, okay, uh, this shows that in multi-level inheritance, okay, the derived class can have access to the can inherit or can have access to the intermediate base class as well as the superclass or the base class. Okay, so you can see here, since the member functions has been made public, right? So you can the derived class can call those two member functions. Okay, so when this member function gets invoked, okay, it executes this function body, it calls this function body and it executes this function body. So you run the cout statements, enter employee information, okay, all these cout statements and cin statements, okay, employee code, employee name, employee designation, employee salary. Okay, after that control comes back to the this function body, okay, and then it executes the next statement, that is customer input data. So again it executes this function body, so it enters the customer information, customer code, customer name, customer designation, and customer balance. Okay, finally after that control comes back to the main function. Okay, so the compiler executes the next statement, that is cus emb cus dot show data. So the object invokes the next member function, that is show data. Okay, so show data, okay, again this function gets called emb cus from the derived class. Okay, so under this function body again you have emb display and cust display, which again belongs to the base class member function, and then derived class member function, the intermediate base class member function. Okay, so it executes this following function body and the following step. Okay, and this. Okay, so by this example you can see that multi-level inheritance. Okay, multi-level inheritance. Okay, though you have one base class, okay, and then from there you inherit multiple derived classes. Okay, and the derived class acts as the base class, yet you can see that uh, the base class is the main class. There's only one base class. Okay, and though you have multiple derived class, yet all those multiple derived class, okay, inherits from the base class. Okay, and can directly access the base class whenever it wants to. Okay, so by this example I hope that you're clear with this multi-level inheritance. Okay, next class we'll discuss about the multiple inheritance. Okay, where the derived class can have multiple base class. Okay, so this we'll discuss tomorrow. Okay, so that will be all for today.